Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today's edition of Ask a Leopard Owner takes us to Brian on a Leopard 53 powercat. Before introducing Brian, I want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Chris, and in addition to having owned a Leopard 45 myself, I get to work with members of the Leopard community, helping to share their stories of adventure, curiosity, and exploration on their Leopard. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's session is being recorded and will be published on leopardcatamarans.com in the coming days. In other words, don't worry about writing everything down. You'll receive an email to this video once it's published. To submit your questions at any point today, go ahead and click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We'll do our best to answer all of your questions, but if we run out of time, we'll share an email address at the end to submit your questions. And lastly, there's a 2-question survey that will pop up after we wrap up today. We'd love your feedback so we can learn what you liked and things that we could do better in future editions. With that out of the way, let's take a look at what we're going to cover. So first, we'll learn more about Brian and why he chose a Leopard 53 powercat. We'll talk about some things that he knows now, having purchased the Leopard 53, what it's like to boat with a family and pets, some modifications he's made, and then question and answers at the end, and then along the way today. So Brian, thanks so much for taking time out of your day. You're a busy guy, just having chatted with you before we got started today. So appreciate you taking the time to share your story. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are.
Sure thing. My name is Brian. My wife is Karen. We have 3 daughters. Our oldest is a junior in college. Our middle daughter is a senior in high school and just got accepted to the University of Miami and about to head there. And we've got a straggler 6th grader in middle school that's going to be with us for quite some time at home. So a family of 3 daughters, and we have 3 dogs, just the name of the boat, 3 Dog Cat. And you picked up on this when we were talking earlier, but 3 Dog obviously is pretty obvious. We get asked a lot, where's the cat? And I thought I was so creative calling it the 3 Dog Cat for catamaran, but nobody gets it. So I don't know. We tried to be creative there. We got this boat about 2 years ago and have cruised it a lot since then, and we'll go into some of that. We did start a YouTube channel because what partly got us into this kind of cruising and gave us the courage to do it is watching a lot of other people out there on their boats and trying to figure it out and being brave and all of that stuff. And we realized there's not a lot out there for power catamarans or even power boat users, liveaboards. So we wanted to kind of give back and share to the community that kind of encouraged us to get out there and do this.
Awesome. And what kind of content can folks expect to find on your channel if they were to check it out?
Well, we've put out a whopping 4 episodes because I also have 3 kids and a full-time job and all the other stuff that goes with that. And so it's like, man, getting out content takes me a little longer than expected. I just retired 2 weeks ago, so I think that'll speed up now. But the content is mostly, just us getting the boat, why we chose the boat, and then our first shakedown trip to Tampa because it was the city, and then we head to Marco Island because it's close to our home. And then now we're on our way to the Bahamas and checking in, getting dogs into the Bahamas and what that was like. And next episode 5 coming out in about a week is our first anchorage, and we do a full anchorage review. It's in the Berry Islands at Great Harbor Key on the backside of it. And so we just do a full anchorage review talking about every different component of the anchorage so that other people looking to maybe stop at that anchorage kind of know what they're in for.
I love it. A video version of Active Captain. This is
that's 100%
amazing. All right. Well, tell us why. I remember when I was looking to buy my Leopard, and even I think fundamentally before I had zeroed in on the brand of a boat, I went back and forth between sailboat, motorboat, if it's going to be sailboat, monohull, catamaran. So there's this whole decision tree with trade-offs and all that. I assume you did the same thing, but tell us a little bit about why you chose a powercat versus a sailboat.
We kind of did the same thing because all the YouTube channels again were sailboats. So we thought, well, that's really the only option, or you can go with the super luxury bougie yachts, and that didn't really feel like us or our family. So as we kind of compared the power cat and the sail cat, The biggest thing for us, because we're starting out as what we call sabbatical cruisers, we're not full-time liveaboards, meaning we go when we can for a month here and there, and then we've got to get back home. We got a family, we got jobs, and so the biggest thing for us was this boat would travel smoothly at 18 knots. That's about 20 miles per hour. It's not an express cruiser, so it's not going to get there at 40 miles an hour, but it's not a trawler that's going to get there at 7 or 8 miles an hour, and it's certainly not a sailboat that's 5 or 6 miles per hour. So less travel time was probably the biggest reason we chose the powercat. And the second one is just the shorter learning curve. Again, we watch those YouTube channels, and those people are all about sailing, and they love sailing, and that's great for them, but there is a lot going on. You got to put down the main and take in the reef. I don't even know what that stuff means. And then there's tacking and climbing up the mast with a harness. And man, it just looked like a terribly long learning curve. And we were ready to go now and not take, a year or two to figure out how to deal with the boat. And then the other big one, because of the less travel time, we wanted to be able to shorten that weather window. I'm a champagne cruiser, and so I don't like to go out unless it's a calm days or 2 or 3 foot seas. I don't like to get pounded. And so sailing is just so dependent upon the weather. And so a good day for us and a power boat is a bad day for them because there's not enough wind. A bad day for us when we're getting pounded is still a bad day for them. There's wind, but they're getting pounded just like we are. And then with the weather, we travel in the summer primarily to the Bahamas right now. And so we needed to get there quickly, but we also, if there's a storm coming or a hurricane in the path, we need to be able to dodge those storms and get out of there quickly as well. And then we come, we live in Southwest Florida. It's beautiful here. We can go out in the Gulf of Mexico to go fishing. We can take the boat to a sandbar and anchor. And so we sold our day boat when we got this boat with intentions of this possibly replacing our day boat as another day boat. And it's worked out pretty well for that. We live about 30 miles up the intercoastal waterway to get out to the Gulf. And so just that 30 miles, in our boat, that's about an hour and a half travel. In a sailboat, that's 5 or 6 hours. Your day's pretty well shot before you even get out the river. And then this boat, we were talking earlier, has a 3-foot draft or 3.5 foot draft. And so I can literally anchor at the same sandbars and beaches that I did with my much smaller center console fishing boat. It lays out great for fishing. So just a lot of potential even for day boat usage.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I know that the trade-off in all this is fuel consumption. And you talk about going faster. I know we're going to get into, you've done some great work towards the end of the presentation that kind of breaks down your fuel costs. But all great reasons. And you're right, sailors are finicky people. They want, not too much wind, just right, but I want, a certain amount to actually make it all work. And it's, I have to say, agree with everything you said. There is something magical when you turn off the engines and both sails are up and you're in the ocean and it's quiet and it's the sound of the water lapping against the hull, like amazing. But I'll see you in 2 days and you'll have already been there,
Yeah,
enjoying
exactly.
two nights at the beach club. So makes sense in terms of why and how you ended up on a powerboat and specifically a power cat. How did you end up on a Leopard, and what kind of drove you to that decision?
The biggest thing with a family of 5, 3 dogs, we needed space. And so, again, to keep pushing on this YouTube thing, but I think most of us have been there. That's where a lot of us start trying to figure this out. We watch things like Naughty Styles where they do all the boat tours, and we went through every different imaginable kind of boat that was within, relatively within the budget we could afford. And so we went through them all, and there's just on these power cats, man, there's just so much room. And I know they've probably heard that before, but 25 feet wide, 53 foot long, they say that has the room of a 65 to 70 foot monohull boat. So it's just the amount of room on it, the upper galley, the lounge area. It's great for Bahamas cruising, so much outdoor space to hang out in. So really just the layout and space was probably first and foremost. You could probably put on top of that price. Obviously, if you want to go to a $6 million boat, I'm sure you could find the even more perfect boat, but that's 4 or 5 times the cost. Some of the other things though were the systems that the boat had. It didn't have too many, which I think is good. I like simplicity. But it had a nice base package and then the ability to kind of upgrade and add options as I wanted to add those or I felt like we needed them. In our particular case, we love the room count on the boat. We have the 3 bedroom option. Now we do have 3 kids, and plus there's me and my wife, and so each of us don't have a bedroom. But my oldest is in college, and so she's not with us all the time. And my middle child is almost in college, so it's really going to be my wife and I and our youngest daughter for the most part. So we like that 3 cabin layout. I suppose you could have went with the 4 cabin layout, and everybody would have had their own bedroom. But then we'd given up that big 3 person shower, as they say out naughty styles, in the master bedroom. I mean, the shower is as big as the shower in our home, and just so much room in that master bedroom. And I'm not gonna lie, we don't love camping. That's not really our thing, and so we didn't want the boat to feel like we were camping in an RV. This feels much more like a really small condo, but it's a condo that you can take to some of the most beautiful places in the world. Of course, when you're considering about the value for price is a big one for everybody. I mean, we all have a budget, whatever that budget is. I'm 48 years old. My whole life, I've been very passionate about not being house poor. I don't want to be so much invested into a house that I can't do all the other things I want to do in life. And so that went the same for our floating second home. And so really considered building a custom catamaran, like a 58-foot custom cad with an off-grade system, and it would have more room, but it ended up being double the price. And so in the sweet price range for the Leopard catamaran at about $1.5 million, $1.6 million, whatever, depending on how you option the things out, I guess. It really was just, it fit that sweet spot for us. As far as size and layout and room count and systems, and just really fit where we wanted to be with a boat.
Nice. And I noticed here you put some other boats that you considered in your decision-making process. So kind of two questions here, maybe just one. So it's relatively easy to, open 4 different browser windows and look at the features and specs and look at the floor plan and try to envision what boat might be best for you. The next step in this journey is always kind of going to a boat show and looking and touching and feeling and then eventually doing a sea trial. A lot of these things can look similar on the surface, right? They're all big white fiberglass things with engines and lovely recessed and direct lighting. But what are some of the things that folks should do when they're on a boat, they're thinking about purchasing one, and where my head goes to is, opening the hatches, looking at the finish, or hey, you might need to be in that engine room one day. How much room is there around there to do stuff like, things like that. What should folks do when they're on these boats at a boat show trying to make a choice?
I know it's tough when you first start out this process, and maybe you've never lived aboard a boat like we had not. And so, you don't know what you don't know. And so that's a bit of a challenge. And so you have to begin imagining like, well, how are we going to use this boat? And for us, it was, we want to go to the Bahamas. Okay, 3-foot draft. That's great. Layout is nice. So then we start going through the boat. Everybody goes to the boat shows. I think the West Palm Beach show is next week coming up. And so I'm sure just about all these catamarans will be there, and you can go through all of them. And so when you get on, it is, like you said, it's opening the hatches. How much storage does this boat have? Oh, it feels like a lot, but how would I fill up all this storage space? Where would my provisions go? Oh, there's not a lot of dry storage, or, there's not a lot of this or that. And then you stand at the helm, as silly as that seems, like, let me stand at this helm. If you've ever driven a boat before, what can I see? What can't I see? I'll be honest, on the Leopard 53, you can't see the port side very well when you're docking because the captain's seat is over on the starboard side, and so it's like, okay, I can't see as well over there. Is that a big deal? Is that not a big deal? Can somebody talk to me so that I know what I'm doing when we're coming into a dock on that side? But man, I can see the starboard side really well, and that's mostly what side you're going to dock on. So you really just start going through, envisioning and imagine yourself on the boat. For us, we've got the 3 dogs. So, okay, how are we going to deal with the 3 dogs? What if we're at a marina and we're at the dock and we've got these sugar scoops and it's level with the dock? And is the dog going to be able to jump off? There's no gate on the back of this boat. Well, can we add a gate to the back of the boat? So it's really, man, just if you're at a boat show, trying to imagine every possible way you would use the boat, and then you're comparing and contrasting. But a lot of times, I'll be honest, it comes so much down to price. I mean, you can start going through these boats and you say, okay, the Leopard is, let's say 1.6 million, and the Iliad's 2.4 million. Do I like this boat $700,000 more than I do this one? And geez, what could I do with that extra 700,000 to upgrade this one or change it that I couldn't do on this one over here? Or like I'll just pick on the Iliad specifically. It's a really tall boat, and so when you start driving that, it gets kind of wonky and it's a little bit harder to handle. Or you've got the what's it, the Fountain Peugeot My 6, and it's smaller boat, so you start feeling a little more cramped and closed in, yet it's a more expensive boat. And it's maybe some different fit and finish on that boat, but you'll want to pay more to have less space. And so it's the same cost benefit analysis you do every time you buy a car or a house, or make any kind of big life choices. I'll tell you, one of the other big things for us with Leopard, compared to these other brands, it probably, I would say, is the most well-known brand of the bunch and has the most boats out there. And you could say, well, there's a lot of boats out there. That's going to make resale hard. But no, everybody knows the brand, and that means more people are looking for that brand or looking for a Leopard 53. Some of these you can buy a long reach that's a new manufacturer, and they travel long distances. That's kind of their niche. But who's heard of it? Nobody's heard of it. So you go to sell it. Is anybody going on Yacht World searching for a long reach or a Grand Ocean? A lot of people out there searching for a Leopard. And so you're going to come up and just, at some point, we're all going to sell this boat. So that's something to keep in mind as you make that purchase decision.
Quick question from the chat here. So Stephanie wants to know specifically around, you mentioned you're on the southwest side of Florida. There was a storm recently. Did you have the boat then? Give us a flavor of what your storm plan might be. And then she has an insurance cost question, which I know we cover in the budget slide, but what's your storm plan?
Yeah. Well, just so everybody knows, I was an insurance agent for the last 15 years of my life. So insurance is very near and dear to my heart. Southwest Florida, I was the largest property insurer in Southwest Florida. And so when Hurricane Ian hit, that's the storm from a year and a half ago, we had just bought the boat 2 months prior. And so actually our YouTube channel, the very first episode is our process of deciding to get a boat, then being so excited, finding the boat, buying the boat, tying it up at the dock, and immediately as we get it, the hurricane hits. And so we had the boat for about 2.5 months, and a storm hits. It was tied up, but we had a 9-foot storm surge on the water behind our house. And so the boat was within inches of actually coming up over top the pilings. Had it done that, then the water would have receded. It would have been up on top of the pilings, and that we wouldn't be talking today. That would have been the end of our Leopard 53 journey. So hurricanes are no joke. I've lived through 3 major hurricanes and several other smaller ones. And it's no joke. And so you got to have a plan. When you go to get insurance for your boat, they're going to ask you what your hurricane plan is. Now, we'll say, with a power boat or a power catamaran, it's a little bit easier to get insurance, and it's a little bit easier to have flexibility with that insurance. With a sail cat, most of them have to get outside of the hurricane belt for hurricane season. With a power cat, because you can kind of outrun the storms, move the boat a lot easier, you have the ability to, we can travel to Bahamas in the summer with our insurance policy and have full coverage. A lot of insurance policies, if you have a sailboat, there is no traveling to the Bahamas in the summertime, at least with most of the policies that we hear other people talking about. So that's kind of a big deal with the insurance and the hurricane portion of things.
Nice. Great experience. And I had a similar experience with mine. Mine was a sailboat, took delivery of it. Hurricane Dorian was swirling off the coast of Florida and the Bahamas. So know what that's
Hurricane
like.
Dorian's Abacos, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Abacos. Ripped through there. Yeah.
Yeah. Several. All right. Well, let's talk about, so you have some sea miles underneath your belt at this point. Walk us through some of the things that you've learned along the way.
A 53-foot, 25-foot wide boat. I had been a boater for a long time, going back 15, 20 years. I got a 21-foot bay boat that we kicked around on for a long time. And then we had a 26-foot center console, started offshore fishing. And then we wanted to start, maybe but staying and camping on the boat. So we went to a 39-foot express cruiser. So we kind of slowly progressed up. But a 53-foot, 25-foot wide boat, man, I said, I will never be able to handle this thing. It's not as bad as you think. In fact, it's a lot better than I possibly imagined. You know, you jump on a floating condo and you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. But it's pretty easy transition. The holes are so far apart, and you've got a bow thruster. I think that's an option. So I definitely encourage the bow thruster option. But it's a really easy boat to maneuver. Obviously, driving open water, no big deal. You put on the autopilot and set it and forget it, and just watch for crab traps and other boats. But docking and anchoring is always the toughest thing. And I was pleasantly surprised with how easy it was to maneuver this boat in relatively tight quarters. It spins on a dime, and so it's been pretty nice. Some of the other things I know now is with this catamaran, we knew it before we got it, but the stability of the boat when you're on anchor. I mean, if you've ever been to active captain and you read through it and it says, great for this size wind or this kind of wind, but if it comes from this direction, it gets kind of rolly. I'll tell you, when it's rolly for everybody else, because of the width and the stability of this boat, we don't feel very much of that roll. And so it gives you a lot more options on anchorage. If you're trying to dodge storms or dodge wind, you can handle a little bit of roll and really not feel it when you're down inside your bedroom and sleeping at night, and sleep pretty sound. One other thing is we'll talk about fuel efficiency on the budget thing, because that's obviously a big expense. And like you said, a lot of people sail because you don't have quite so much of that expense, and you don't have to pay for gas, diesel every little bit. But actually, surprisingly, at the lower speeds, if you're willing to travel at sailboat speeds or trawler speeds, it gets incredibly good fuel economy. And so if you're doing a long trip, maybe you're trying to get the boat from the Bahamas to the Dominican and down to the Virgin Islands, and you're willing to do some 30-hour, 35-hour overnight cruises or sails, and you put it at 6 or 7 miles an hour, you're going to get really good fuel economy. And so that was surprising to me. There was a bit of a learning curve to the systems. Again, I've always had fishing boats and that style of boat. And so there's a lot of systems on a liveaboard to manage, and that doesn't matter if it's a bougie yacht or if it's a powercat or if it's a sailboat. There are just a lot of systems, and so you got to learn kind of to be an electrician, where you chase fuses and you figure out what breakers have kicked, and then you got to learn how to manage your power, because you only have so much power to deal with depending on how you set the boat up. And you got to learn about solar power and inverters and when and how you want to use the generator. So you got to become kind of an electrician in a small way, and then you've got the plumbing situation. You're making your own water. You got to then learn how to manage that water, because you've got a limited supply of water. And then of course we got marine toilets and all the stuff that goes along with that. We haven't had any problems with ours, knock on woods, but we know we will at some point in time, because everybody does. One of the other things that we know now after purchasing is just the community support. People that own these types of catamarans, especially leopards, are very passionate about it. They're all trying to learn and figure out the same things you are. They all have things break or things go wrong or a breaker kick. When you first buy a house as a young person, and something doesn't work, your refrigerator's not working, you're like, the breaker hasn't kicked, I have no idea what's going on. And then somebody comes over, you pay somebody $100 and they come in and hit the GFI, and you're like, oh my gosh, that fixed the refrigerator. That was so easy. I'm so stupid for not knowing that. There's just a lot of little things like that. It's like, it's not a big deal, but it kind of feels like it at a time. You're at an anchorage and, it's beautiful and it's awesome. All of a sudden your air conditioning stops working and the kids are complaining, and it's a simple switch or a simple this or that to fix it. So it's nice to have that community support to help you figure those kind of simple things out. Some other things with maintenance is key. I put on here just staying ahead of issues. Boats are notorious for constantly having issues. That's just part of boat life. But you can mitigate a lot of that by making sure you stay on top of the maintenance that is suggested. And then I have a mechanic and a few other boat helpers on hand that I can call anytime. So if we're planning a long trip, I'll just come have them do a quick walkthrough and check all the systems, tighten everything up, make sure everything is in good working order. And then I mentioned this before, but I just love the shallow draft of this boat. I knew it when I got it, that 3.5 foot draft, that sounded great, but it's really exceeded expectations when, everybody else is in an anchorage and they've got to, it's 5.5 foot draft and they got to stay out kind of at the edges of the anchorage, and you can take your boat nearly all the way up to the beach and anchor, and you've got all this space, and the dogs can jump off the back and swim up to the beach. It's just that shallow draft is just, at least for our cruising grounds in the Bahamas, you can't beat it.
Amazing. Another question in the chat, just around being comfortable and having confidence driving a larger boat like that? Did you take any classes, or was it just kind of getting behind the wheel and doing it? And then about how long did it take from when you purchased it to feel comfortable behind the wheel?
I'm about 2 years in right now. I'll be 2 years in July. And I'll be honest, I'm still getting comfortable. You come into a marina, I don't know if it matters how long you've boated. There's always that little bit of anxiety that sneaks in. It's like, oh my gosh, everybody's watching me, and there's current and there's wind. No, I didn't take any classes. I had been boating for quite a long time, and so the concept is fairly similar across all
Hmm.
boats, especially if you've had twin engine boats in the past, where you got to know how to use your engines forward and reverse to move each side of the boat backward and forward and spin. So no classes here. I had the boat delivered. We bought it on the east coast of Florida. A delivery captain drove it across the Okeechobee waterway and then brought it to our dock, said thanks, shook my hand, and walked away. So that was my delivery. I didn't buy the boat new. I'm the second owner of this boat. And so that was my delivery. And so it was like, all right, let's figure this out. And it was turning it on, bringing the family on board, and we just went for it. So I don't know if that's everybody's willingness to do something like that, but that's how we went about it. Now I certainly can take a class. I probably should at some point in time, because I know there are folks out there that can dock these things without a bow thruster because they're so easy to spin and turn on a
Hmm.
dime. um, I cheat. I use the bow thruster, and I'm not one bit embarrassed about that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Two other questions in the chat, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how you plan for travel and what tips you might be able to share there. Specific one around the swim platform. Love that big platform. I know we have some pictures in the presentation where it's partially submerged and you're using it as almost a seat or a bench in the water. But what's the experience been like? And then from a tender standpoint, what size tender have you been able to accommodate on that?
So yeah, it's in a future slide, but I'll just jump to it now. Our absolute favorite spot on this boat is that swim platform. When we are at an anchorage in the crystal clear Windex waters of the Bahamas, that swim platform, we lower it down into the water. And man, it is just awesome. That's where we hang out really all day. And even if there's a current in the anchorage, we'll hang on the back of it, drift back in the
Mm.
current, swim back to the boat, hang there back and forth. It really is just amazing. One time we are at Norman's Key, the seaplane is there, and so you lower the swim platform in, the seaplane's over there, you're swimming off the back. It was just really, truly an incredible experience. So that swim platform is our absolute favorite part. It's the dog's favorite part too. And what's really cool is our dogs. We have a chocolate lab, we have a poodle, and we have a labradoodle, or golden doodle, I mean. And so our dogs, they too, they'll jump off the sugar scoops, and then they come back to the swim platform. They can wade around in the water. Our chocolate lab, he's 9 years old, and it's getting harder for him to kind of get in and out of the boat, but we can put him on that swim platform from the water, lift it up, let him walk right off onto the sugar scoop. So I know that's a lot of on and on about a swim platform, but it is our absolute favorite part of the boat. And then to get to the dinghy or tender part with that, and so one of the things with that swim platform is, from factory, it comes with chocks that actually, support your dinghy. But when you have the dinghy off, they lay flat into the floor. And so you're not tripping over them or stubbing your toes on them. So they lay absolutely flat into the floor. So that's a really cool feature. As far as tender goes, we have, because of a big family, and three big dogs, we had the absolute biggest tender you could possibly go with for the boat. We have an ALX tender. It's 13 feet long. You can do a longer length because the platform kind of, when it goes down, it goes out from the boat. So the length doesn't matter so much, but there is a weight limitation. I'm wanting to say it's either 700 or 750 pounds. And so our 13-foot tender with a 40 horsepower motor, fully loaded with gas, we are right at that top weight threshold. If you want to go with a bigger tender, something we've considered is you can actually add a lift, or have somebody add a lift on the back too, to help support that as it comes up the lift platform, so it's not putting so much pressure on it. But for now, we're staying with the tender that we have. Obviously, if you go smaller on tender, don't put as much weight on it, you'll have no problem with it.
All right, and then one more question, and we'll go over to the next slide. Skip wants to know, living in Southwest Florida, Any recommendations on service or parts or repair facilities? Seems like most of the catamaran service is on the East Coast, not the West Coast of Florida. Suggestions?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something we've kind of had to figure out because there's not a lot of us over here. I think there's a couple of Leopard 53s, one in Naples and maybe one in Marcos. So there's not a lot of us over here, and everybody either goes to the Leopard dealership on the other coast, or they go to Just Catamarans, and even the solar company we use. We'll get into the solar and power setup that we have, but it's actually an East Coast company because we couldn't find anybody on our coast that could do the kind of work that we wanted to do for that. But I will say, so it just took some time over here in Southwest Florida, but you find a mechanic that is good, that's willing to travel, that's in the area, but willing to come to our house and service the boat. So we need an oil change, an engine service. He comes out and he takes care of it on site. We don't have to take it anywhere. Same with the air condition. You can find, yacht folks that'll come and work on the AC, and you
Mm-hmm.
can find another one that can do these 20 different things. So I have a little short list of 5 people for all the different little things that we need to have done with the boat, because I'll be honest, I'm not a super handy person. I'm great with insurance. I'm great with technology. But when it comes to working on things, I'm not great yet. I hope to get better with that. But I got a lot of people on speed dial or speed text that I can reach out to right here in Southwest Florida that have been great to take care of things. Now, if you want a major overhaul done, I'm getting ready to take it over to Just Cats in a month because I want to put a solar arch on the back to add some more solar. I want to add some cabinetry to the aft deck. And so not really anybody that I trust locally to do that. So for my wife and I, the kids are in school. My daughter can drive and everything. So we're going to hop on the boat and just call it a couple's trip, cruise down to Key West, and then on around to Danny Beach there and have them do the work for us and drive home and go back and get it when it's finished up.
Nice. And then can you cut through that Snake Creek is midway through the Keys? Can you get through there?
Snake Creek. I don't know what that
And I might
is.
be getting the name wrong. I was always looking at a way to cut through, not have to go all the way down to Key West on the
Well,
sailboat.
yeah. We go through. We go to Key West sometimes just for the fun of it. But if we're going to go to the Bahamas, we actually go from Fort Myers to Marathon. You can actually cut right through at the
There you
bridge
go.
there at
Okay.
Marathon and stay at Boot Key overnight, which is right near to open water, and then from there to Bimini, is like a 6 or 7 hour travel.
Okay. Nice. Nice. Cool. All right. Speaking of travel, let's talk a little bit about how you approach trips and what you guys have coming up.
So provisioning is something we're learning and going, the Costco and getting all the supplies and whatnot. So you do that at the start of your trip and you load up the boat. I'll just just use a real life example. So last summer we did a 2 month cruise of the Bahamas. We left very beginning of June and came home at the end of July. So we were provisioning for about a month before, getting odds and ends. And then the day before, you go and get all your perishables, your fruit and your meat, and you get it all loaded up. This boat is great because it's got a full size refrigerator, like literally the same fridge you have in your house is on this boat. So you've got a large freezer in that. Our boat is optioned with the additional freezer there in the galley, and so we've got 2 freezers, and we just loaded them to the gills with meat and stuff for smoothies, frozen fruit, frozen veggies, and all of that kind of stuff. So there's so much storage. There's storage in the floor that you can load just pantry item after pantry item. There's storage in the master bedroom that you can load up. And that's not, we're going to do a longer trip this summer in the 2 4 peaks in the front of this boat, in the bow on both sides. I mean, there is no reason that you couldn't stock up for 3 or 4 months really if you wanted to, as far as provisioning goes. The other thing with provisioning, and I drop down to the maintenance part of this, you want to provision your spare items. Even though I'm not a mechanic, there are mechanics in the Bahamas and Nassau or Georgetown or some of the bigger areas. And so you want to provision, all the spare items that's going to be difficult to get. You can't have everything under the sun, of course, but all the spare items you can carry with you. You want to have those when you get there. That's the other benefit. You asked about the mechanic or the people that work on the boat that I have back in Southwest Florida. The nice thing about building those relationships with those guys is I can be in the Bahamas and something's not working. I can pick up the phone and call them. They're familiar with my boat. Within a minute or two, they generally can talk me through how to fix it, how to troubleshoot it, and resolve the problem. One of the other things when you're planning for travel, obviously, is your route planning. You know, where you want to go, how you want to get there, how much fuel you plan on burn. You got to understand your boat and your fuel burn. And then I just put on here flexibility is key, because obviously, if you know anything about this, you've got to stay flexible. You can't say I'm leaving June 1st and I'm coming home June 18th, and that's how it's going to be. It's all dependent upon the weather, unless you want to get yourself in some really uncomfortable situations. With weather monitoring, you got to almost be a weatherman, get used to it, where you're constantly looking at weather 2 or 3 times a day. Especially for us, we're in the Bahamas in the summertime, and so we are monitoring all the hurricane tracks and paths, and we're monitoring what direction the wind's going to shift to, and whether there's going to be an afternoon storm, and kind of planning our anchorages based on that, planning our, hey, we'd like to stay another week, but it looks like we need to get out of here now so that we don't get hit with the weather and so forth. With your boat, you want to have a good communication plan. Most boats you're going to set up with a VHF and AIS that kind of tracks your location in perspective to other boats. We like to have a satellite phone on board, an EPIRB on board, and then probably the most important thing is that float plan buddy, just somebody that's onshore, on land, that you can share your travel arrangements with. Mine was my office manager for my business. I would tell her, hey, we're leaving Marathon Key this morning at 7 a.m. We expect to be in Bimini at 2 o'clock this afternoon to check in the customs, make sure that I get there. And she would track me. There's a link for my satellite phone. She would track me until we got to our location. And I would text her when I got there and say I was there. Or occasionally I would get there and I would rather go have a drink, and I would forget to text her. And she would text me and say, hey, are you there? Are you alive? I'm about to call the Coast Guard. So you want to have that travel buddy that can really keep up with you and do reach out to emergency services if needed. And then lastly, I'll mention here for some of the planning and so forth with our travels is our youngest daughter. She's in the 6th grade. She'll be finishing that up. Regular private school that she goes to. She'll finish that up in May. And then we've enrolled her for Florida virtual school. We're probably not great homeschool parents. We don't have the patience for that per se, but we enrolled her in Florida virtual school, which is a service of the state. It's free. And it's online instruction. And so every morning she'll get up, we'll watch it with her. She'll do her classes, she'll do her homework. We'll be done in 2 or 3 hours is the plan, and then get to enjoy and have fun and, live life the rest of the day. So school is important to us. It's important to her, but this virtual school seems like it's going to be an option for us, but we'll be able to tell you that better in a year once we know that. As far as upcoming travel plans, like I said, I just retired, sort of, at 48 years old from my job. I sold my business and just taking a break. I don't know how long that break's going to be, but probably several years here. And so the plan is our 2 kids will be in college. They're probably not going to be with us. They have other things they'd rather do in life right now anyway. Our youngest is crazy excited about this year. So we're doing a year of travel. We're going to see how that goes for us. We leave in June, spend the summer in the Bahamas. We'll come home to get our daughter off to college in August, and then take the fall to go back to the Bahamas and spend more time there, because it's just absolutely amazing and so much to see. And then begin to work our way south from there. As time goes on, we'll get down to the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, and then on down to the BVI and the islands south of there, and just explore the heck out of that for the next year, at least is our plan. And then long-term plan, who knows? This boat can go just about anywhere, and so we'll figure that out from there.
Question in the chat here around, and I'll just read this one verbatim. So they say, I've never captained a boat before, but have driven and been on boats, most of my life. Would you recommend starting with a cat like this? They're in their situation, they're looking at a 46 powercat and want to make sure it's not too much boat to start with.
I would if you've never captained a boat before, I would definitely recommend a class. And probably after taking a day-long class, you would be a better captain than I am. I mean, because they're going to show you the right way to do things, and not how I've figured out how to do it over the years. So 100%, man. I think you could start with a 56. I think you could start with a 53. You get beyond that, it starts to get a little hard for one or two people to handle alone. But I think absolutely. Why not? I mean, it's a learning curve, and you don't want to, come slam it into a dock or anything like that. But just take everything slow and steady. Get yourself out in a safe, open space, and somebody that can really show you the proper way of anchoring and of docking. And I don't really see any reason why you can't. And I'll just add a bit of encouragement to that as well. And this kind of goes to the community, which I think is on the next slide. But there are community of boat owners or Leopard 53 owners or Leopard owners or powercat owners all over Facebook and perhaps other places too. Facebook is just where I get my news. And so when you go to those communities, there are all these people that are in a similar life stage or similar season and same desires and same dreams, and we're all trying to figure it out together. And so I'm on the regular Leopard forum that's sailboats and power cats and everybody, and then I'm on the Leopard power cat forum that's the 46s and the 53s and the 51s and everybody with a Leopard power cat, and then I'm on a specialty one of like 55 people that are all Leopard 53 owners. And I'll just encourage you that on each one of those, and I'm more close with the ones on the Leopard 53 forum just because we're really sharing a lot of stuff back and forth. But a lot of people, this is their very first boat. They've never owned even a pontoon. So a lot of folks, this is their first boat because I mean, at the end of the day, it's a big condo that you can take anywhere you want and stay in the most beautiful locations. And so getting it there is easy. Figuring out the weather and figuring out routes and all that, if you just take some time, but you have to figure that out. Driving the boat through the open ocean, it drives itself. And so really the only difficult part of maneuvering a boat is tight spaces in marinas or fuel docks or maybe anchoring, but really even that is relatively simple. You get some instruction, watch some YouTube videos or have a captain show you, and it's relatively easy with some caution.
Amazing. So one of the things that in this slide, just to tee this up a bit, I learned this firsthand when I bought my boat. I realized that not only was it all the things I wanted and checked all the boxes in terms of value and design and all that great stuff. I think the first time I went to an anchorage and saw other leopards, and then someone tendered over, and you plug into this community of people. The digital version of that, what you just mentioned, is completely true. But
Yeah.
I've also found that, if it's at a marina or at an anchorage somewhere, there's always a friendly person on the other end say, "Hey, what's going on?" And, strike up a conversation. Have you found that to be true as well?
I have. And honestly, we're kind of a ready, shoot, aim kind of family. So we don't give a lot of thought to things sometimes in advance as we should. We're pretty spontaneous. And
Hmm.
so we took our express cruising fishing boat to the Abacos for our 25th wedding anniversary. Like, that was amazing, but I hated staying at a Verbo. I want to get a boat I can take over with me and take the dogs. And so that's how this all kind of started. And so we got the boat and we go to the first anchorage. It was Acosta State Park, which is, right here in my backyard, basically. And so we take that as kind of a first cruise. We're going to overnight for the weekend. And so we get there, we anchor, and it's beautiful. And we're seeing the dolphins swim around. And sure enough, man, here comes somebody up on their dinghy. And they're in a Leopard sailboat just across the little bay there. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of an introvert, and we got this boat because we wanted to find the most exclusive, away from everybody place, and not have anybody around. And I'm like, man, I just got here. What did I do? I thought they were coming to tell me I did something wrong, or I
Right,
drove over
right.
the anchor chain or something. And they literally were coming to say, hey, we love your boat. We're the Leopard over there. If you need anything, just let us know. We've circumnavigated the globe twice, so we know a little bit about this, and on, and your dogs are so cute and so forth. So I am a recluse, but yet it was pretty nice to have that communication and that relationship at an anchorage. And I'll tell you another one. So we were one time, where were we? I think Shroud Key, and a terrible storm was coming in, and there was another Leopard power cat in the same anchorage, and it was just nasty and blowing and kind of scary, and really my first time through a really bad storm like that. And they called us up on the radio just to check in on us. How you guys doing? When do you think this is going to pass? I think this or that. And so just I don't know. It felt good to know somebody else was there with me, kind of in the same situation, going through probably the same anxiety we were, watching our anchor alarms and trying to make sure we didn't drag, and seeing the waves on the rocks behind us, hoping we didn't
Yeah.
drag back and hit
Yeah.
those. And it's just nice to have that. I'll share even one more. We went to Key West for New Year's Eve this year, and so just posted on one of the Leopard forums. Hey, give me some good anchorages down there because we don't want to stay in the marina the whole time, and give me a marina though, because we do want to be in a marina for New Year's and all of that. And, a guy with the Leopard 51 reached out and he told me what marina to stay in. He told me some great anchorages that we would love. And then once we got to the marina, he came over and said, "How are things going? Do you need anything?" And then we start talking about our boats and sharing common things and trips we've had and all of that. And his dog played with my dog. And so, man, just, it really, truly is. I guess it's like, I'm in Southwest Florida. A lot of snowbirds retire here. We've been here for 25 years now, so it's a little different. But I know when snowbirds retire, they go to their little golf course gated community, and they have that commonality. They play golf at the same place, and they eat at the same club at night for dinner, and they have the same builder who did all the same things wrong with their house that they can. So they have all these commonalities that they found with each other. And so for us, it's kind of nice to have found that within the Leopard community.
Amazing. All right, let's talk a little bit about you touched on the swim platform in terms of your favorite spot on the boat. Let's talk about favorite features that bring it to life.
Yeah, and it's really about the spaciousness of the boat. That large fly bridge up top, there's just so much room, and unless you've been up there, again, if it's the 46, or I don't remember the number below that, or the 53, or all of them, they just have so much room up there on the fly bridge. And that, when you're underway, that's where you spend time. We have a rule, because we have young kids and just kids and family and dogs and everything else, that's where everybody sits when we're underway, unless you take a walkie-talkie with you and go downstairs and we watch you and make sure we don't want any man overboard. So upstairs is where we are when we are underway. And there's just so much room. There are so many areas that everybody can kind of lay down and lounge and read a book or be on their phone or whatever, in whatever space they want. There's the grill, and there's an extra fridge, and there's an ice maker, and you've got all that area in the aft back that you can, dogs can lay out and sun themselves. That's where we put coolers and other things where we can feed the dogs and whatnot. So we really just love that large fly bridge. And then our other area is that aft lounge area, just the back part of the boat there, with all the different ways of seating and the table. And that's where we have dinner, and we store our dive tanks, and, just storage for all of our gear and our cleaning supplies. And so that large aft lounge area, that's our bread and butter right there. Now, just put on here too, the spacious engine room. If you start walking through other boats, you'll realize just how big the engine rooms are on these Leopard powercats. It's spacious. You don't feel cramped. There's plenty of room to work. You do spend a lot more time down there than you think, because before you take off every time, you want to check your oil, and you got to clean out your air conditioning strainers, and you're checking on your batteries or this, or you're topping off something on your generator. And so there's a ton of room down there, so you never feel cramped and crowded. And more importantly, there's a lot of room for upgrades if you're adding batteries and all of that stuff, or a dive tank, or air compressor for your dive tanks. It's just plenty of room down there to do a lot of extra stuff or have storage and whatnot. So those are our favorite features on the boat. And of course, we talked about our favorite spot, that swim platform.
Nice. Tell us a little bit about some of the modifications that you made since you took delivery of the boat.
Now, I mentioned I'm the second owner of this boat, technically the third owner. The first owner kind of built it out, but never took possession of it, or they did just briefly. And so the person we bought it from was really the initial kind of owner of the boat. So most of the work had been done on the boat before we got it. And we're hull number 2. And these folks decided to option it out to the hilt. And so I can kind of speak to the ones that we love, the ones that are okay, and the ones that, I think you can do without. So I'll just really quickly, before we run out of time, go through the list here. I just put a water maker. That's a necessity. Maybe you can get by without it, but I absolutely think go with a water maker. I don't think you have to go with the biggest, most production water maker. In fact, the smaller ones use a lot less power. So we have a decent sized, smaller 12-volt water maker. It doesn't use hardly any power and keeps up with our family of 5. I think radar and sonar are a necessity. I think freshwater heads are a necessity. I can't believe they still put saltwater heads on boats that aren't sailboats. So I think freshwater heads are a necessity. I put here that a Starlink satellite is a game changer. I live kind of out in the country, so we've had Starlink for a long time on our house, but it has changed the world, I think, for boaters. That's why we can do Florida virtual school for our daughter. Man, I can stream March Madness out on the hook, which is I'm a big basketball fan, so sitting out at a beautiful Anchorage and watching basketball is incredible using YouTube TV and Starlink satellite. We have an enclosure on our fly bridge. My wife says that is a necessity because she doesn't want all the wind and stuff blowing on her up there, and we're able to close it up. She also says the vented washer and dryer is a necessity. Again, big family. We've got it's going all the time. There's always laundry happening. We upgraded the anchor and chain. It's 300 feet of chain, and we put an 88-pound rocknet anchor. Necessity to me, especially when you're on hook, there's that security that you've got the right ground tackle that's holding you in place. This boat has a rub rail. We personally added sugar scoop gates to the back of the boat so our dogs can't escape in marinas. They were running around the Atlantis Marina one time because they jumped off the boat, so we added those as soon as we got back. We added shower doors. Some of these things are silly, but we added shower doors because there's none on it, and our family liked to have doors on the shower so all the water and everything wouldn't come out to the rest of the bathroom. We've got line cutters, dual ray core filters that help filter your fuel. We upgraded the air-conditioned sea strainer so I don't have to clean it so often. We've got aft sunshades, so when you're at an anchorage, you can block the sun. I'm personally working on a custom mattress right now with a company because the mattress is okay that's on there, and we put a topper on it. I've had 2 back surgeries, so I'm basically having a Tempur-Pedic mattress that's being cut down to fit in this starboard bedroom. The prior owner put a ghost security system on this boat, and I had not really turned it on and used it. Did see down in Grenada the recent situation where a couple was taken from their boat because somebody escaped from prison, and so we've decided to go ahead and turn that on and use the security system. I think with 3 big dogs we're okay, but it's just extra security. The prior owner did yacht controller, and if you've heard of that, it's like DockMate where you can drive the boat with the remote control. I personally have never even used this, but I think I would if I was a solo sailor. So if I was out there by myself doing this single-handed, I think that would be a necessity. For us, it's me and my wife, and there's really no reason for us to have to use that, but it's cool that we have it, and maybe we need to get it out and use it. We have a FLIR camera, so we have night vision, so we can take off early in the morning before the sun comes up and kind of see what we're doing. We added a boarding ladder so our dogs can more easily get off and on the boat, and so we can too when the tides come down at the dock. You can see the custom teak ladder there on the fly bridge, and I didn't add that, but that's a nice feature because we've got solar panels up on the roof, and now I can go up and power wash those off real easily without having to pull out a ladder. It's kind of a big deal and really nice to have. And then we'll get into the solar and lithium here now.
All right, sounds good.
So on that, I'm on all these forums and so much conversation of, do I do solar? Do I do lithium? Do I just go with a generator? What should I do? I'll just tell you what we have. This may mean a lot to some of you and not anything to the rest of you, but we've got 2 Victron inverters that basically can run everything on the boat, the air conditioner, the fridge, the whole 9 yards. We've got 2,400 watts of solar on the fly bridge. We lost 2 solar panels during the hurricane and some of the rest were damaged. So we finally just got all of those replaced. But right now, 2,400 watts of brand new solar on the fly bridge. It's working great. We did 8 lithium batteries that are 330 amp batteries that are the new, bigger, more powerful batteries. It's a 12-volt system, so that gives us 2,640 amp hours or about 33 kilowatt hours. And what all that means is our boat is basically self-sustaining with all that system. So as long as, we get, not 5 cloudy days in a row, but 2 or 3 sunny days here and there, our boat is self-sustaining without having to run a generator ever. And especially if we're moving anchorages, the alternators will charge the battery some as well. So it's a self-sustaining boat, less the air condition. The air condition, uses a ton of power. And so if you want to use the air condition, you are going to have to run the generator and kind of figure out how you want to manage that power and how long you want to run the air condition and so forth. I mentioned we're adding another 1,600 watts of solar in a couple of weeks through a solar arch off the aft deck there. It'll kind of be shade over the swim platform, dinghy platform back there. So that will get us closer. I still don't think we'll not be able to run the generator, but during the daytime, we would be able to run the AC and then maybe recharge the batteries 3 or 4 hours at night while we're sitting at dock, and then turn that off before we go to bed. And so mostly self-sustaining. And for us, that was important because if you're running that generator 8 to 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, it needs a oil change every 200 to 250 hours. And so every 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to be changing the oil if you're doing it properly in your generator. So my family wanted the air condition. I said we don't like camping, and they wanted to not have to run that generator all the time. And so this is a good setup for us. But I'll tell you that we have a lot of solar and batteries. I don't think everybody does quite that much, and you can certainly get by with a whole lot less.
Give us a little bit of background on what your experience has been cruising with pets or three dogs in this situation.
Yeah, the three dog cat, that's kind of our thing. And so what we've learned is you got to be patient. Dogs are a lot of work at home, but they're even more work on a boat. This is all new to them. They all have different personalities. So you just got to show a lot of patience because they're figuring this out just like you are. But it's amazing, man. I've said this 10 times probably, but dog gets on a boat. They don't know where you're going. They don't know when you're coming home or even if you're coming home. And they're still just happy to go along for the ride. So it's just been fun watching them on their journey. We got a YouTube video where we're teaching them how to go potty on the boat, and they use a turf and a pee pad, and that was kind of funny of them trying to figure that out. But it has made life easier that we don't always have to take them to the beach on the dinghy. We put it up on the bow, which seems to work best. You got to do some planning. I mean, you committed to bring your dogs and pets on the boat, so since you made that commitment, you got to make the commitment to plan some daily activity for them too. So runs on the beach or playing in the sand or swimming off the swim platform in the back. But man, our dogs just, every one of them absolutely loves it, have a blast. And if we even go near the boat, they are sprinting down there to make sure they don't get left behind.
Love it. So something that's probably always on folks' mind when it comes to this. Great, I bought the boat. How much does it actually cost to own the boat? So walk us through this slide if you would.
Well, if obviously the greatest cost is buying the boat, or if you do a mortgage on it, a loan on it, that is the expense of that. I'll just jump over to kind of the month budget first on the right hand side. The insurance, I pay about 18,000 a year for insurance. You maybe can do better than that, depending on deductibles and so forth. But that's what our insurance through Chubb runs per year. Repairs and maintenance, I budget about 1,000 to 2,000 per month. Some months it's nothing, some months it's more than that, but that's the oil changes and all the service intervals and everything that you have to do with the boat. And then repairs you have to do. We've got some subscriptions, a couple $100 a month for Starlink, the Ghost system, and our Navionics charts. You get a boat, you're going to be wanting to do upgrades most likely, and so you have to take that into account in your budget, how many upgrades you want to do, when you want to do those upgrades. And then of course there's fuel, and I'll jump over to the other two scenarios there, our day budget and our weekend budget. We cruise at 18 knots, which is the upper end cruising speed, and so at that we're getting about 6 nautical miles per gallon. So at that, if we're cruising 100 miles, that's 166 gallons. At $4 a gallon, it's a $600 or $700 day trip on the boat. So that can get kind of expensive. But then you start breaking it out to a weekend budget. Now you're, maybe going 150 miles to go to Cayo Costa or the 10,000 Islands for us. And the anchorage is free. All you're really paying for is the fuel to get there, because you're going to have food when you're at home anyway. So we don't take that into consideration. So we cruise at that. If you're willing to cruise a lot slower, I don't know the numbers. I think it's like 1.5 miles per gallon, or maybe it's even 2 miles per gallon that you can get on it. And so, yeah, it takes you a little longer to get there, but you got a lot more money left in your checkbook when you get there as well. So that's just real short and dirty, unless somebody has questions on that. But that's where the budget is for us. The fuel is the biggest thing. If you need to stay in a marina, and store the boat in the marina for long periods of time, obviously that's a huge expense, and I don't have any idea what the cost of that is. We keep our boat behind the house, but I know that's going to be a pretty good expense for you.
And where are you going with all this? What's the dream with the boat? So I could be at this anchorage in Wadrick Wells, I think every day, at least
Yeah,
for a
for
month
sure.
out of the year. But yeah, what's your goal with the boat?
Yeah, I mean, the Bahamas are so amazing, and specifically the Exumas. I think you could spend 2 years there and not even scratch the surface on all the beautiful anchorages that are there. But the goal is that for this summer, and then this fall, like I said, head further south in the Caribbean, maybe. And then from there, though, who knows? I mean, we are dreamers and planners, and so we've talked about man, French Polynesia. And I don't think I would drive the boat there. I don't even know if it would be possible. You'd have to get fuel bladders and so forth. But you can get these boats shipped places, and it's not cheap. But we've really considered, you know, if this year goes well and our daughter does great in school as a seventh grader, man, eighth grade would be another great year to try it again and maybe take that boat, have it shipped over to the French Polynesian Islands, and spend a year, man, just in probably an even more beautiful place that we can't even imagine just from the videos and whatnot that we see. So, I mean, that's our goals. We're just taking it year by year. We have a plan for the next year. We'll have a plan when she's in eighth grade. High school, who knows? I mean, maybe virtual school's her thing. Maybe it's not. She's a big volleyball player and in the sport. So a lot depends on our daughter, probably more so than anything. But 48 years old, she'll be out of school in 6 or 7 years. And from there, man, when it's just me and my wife, who knows the distances we can travel and the places that we can explore. But we dream a lot about it, that's for sure.
One question before we wrap up here and get one piece of advice from you. Stephanie has a question here, just in terms of cruising around different places. Is there different policies around where you can discharge waste, fuel exhaust, like just different things to know in different waters?
Yeah, it's different in all waters. Generally, I don't know it off the top of my head. I have a little placard that tells me, but generally, I think it's 5 miles offshore. You can, you know, discharge waste. You can even dump certain kinds of trash. We never do that. We just wait till we get to trash bins. But dumping your waste is kind of a big deal. So, you know, why we move the boat every so often, because you've got to go out and got to empty out those waste tanks. So I think it's 5 miles offshore, but don't quote me on that. And I don't know the specifics, you know, by country or anything like
Yeah.
that. We just kind of stick with that rule of thumb.
Consult a local resource or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, give us one piece of advice, and then we've answered all the questions, so we'll end right on time.
All
And
right. Well, real easy. It's no perfect time or life stage to do this. I mean, every sailing YouTube video that's out there, it always starts with we sold everything and we bought this floating home and blah blah blah. And that's one way to do it for sure. Sell everything, become a liveaboard. You know, this is your new floating home. We took a different route. We got kids in college and high school and middle school. We got 3 dogs, one who's aging. I still working partially, and my wife's still working partially, and we still have a house and all the other responsibilities of life, and yet we still took the jump and did this thing. So my one piece of advice is there is no perfect time or perfect way or perfect stage of life to do this. It's when it works for you, and you can design it any way you want.
amazing. Well, thank you, Brian, so much for taking the time to join us. And a reminder to folks to keep an eye out for the 2-question survey that will pop up as soon as I hit end on the webinar, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.